All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ramon Downs, and I'm here with Mary Mango. And we are going to bring you some, hopefully very specific information about the two subjects of RFPs and buy to pay. So we want to basically give you the step-by-step, walk you through both systems, as well as answer any questions that you may have pertaining to either system. This is a really small group. It's very intimate, so feel free to jump in if you have a question on anything specific, or we can, or you can put any questions in the chat and we'll try and answer those as well. So today, again, really quickly, like I said, we're going to be navigating the RFPs. So that includes requests for payments, reimbursements for yourself, and reimbursements for someone else. We're also going to be covering buy to pay and just kind of give you any checklists and documents or forms that we may have for you. So this is really just for these purchasing purposes. So generally there are three ways that we have purchases made. This will be covering two of them. The third is CVCs. There are a few things that I want to stress before you even begin to purchase. There are just some things that I really want to stress. And please, this is information that you should spread around to your groups, information that's very important, that we feel are the most important things. Before you do any purchasing, you have to be listed as a financial signatory on your club account. So you go into Engage, and we'll go through that really briefly shortly, and set yourself or have an officer set you as a financial signatory. What will happen is if you try and make a purchase using an RFP if you try and do anything using RFPs or buy to pay, we will reject it if you are not listed as a financial signatory. You can also start the process and send it to a financial signatory. You should know your account numbers. So anytime you're going to purchase anything, you should know the club account number. So whatever club you're working with or working for, you should know the account number that you're utilizing. If you are doing any reimbursements for an event, or if you're doing any purchasing for an event, please, please, please register that event. If you have a question about whether the event should be registered, just register it anyways, because we will let you know. If it doesn't have to be registered, we'll let you know. But if it does, you don't want to be in a situation where we're not approving a reimbursement of money that you spend out of pocket because the event wasn't registered. And finally, this is the big one. No gift cards under any circumstances. No gift cards, no gift, anything for restaurants, nothing, no gift cards. The reason being, I don't want to go into a whole tax liability diatribe, but the reason being is that MIT as an institute doesn't not have control over if you're purchasing gift cards. We don't have control over if you're using that for income. So as a general rule at MIT, nobody's really allowed to purchase gift cards unless they have special approval, which does not come from us. And like I talked about before, you want to make sure that you're a financial signatory. You can follow this link, or you can use the QR code that we have here. We'll be sending this out to all the folks that registered, so don't have to worry about writing it down really quickly. You'll be getting this in the mail. Once you do go on to register as a financial signatory, what you'll do is go onto your group page and go into the officers section, where you would be able to select your position in the club, whether you're president, treasurer, or you can leave it blank. You don't have to have a position. You want to make sure that you're an active officer, because if you're not an officer, you cannot make changes to this page. So if you have a colleague of yours that is in your group that is an officer, have them make you an officer so that you can make this change, or they can make the change on your behalf. And finally, this is where you would select yourself to be a financial signature or somebody else in the club. Really quickly, today we're just talking about RFPs and buy to pay. And again, they're both ways of purchasing. So we just wanted to point out some of the differences of each system. If you're doing a reimbursement or paying you have an invoice from a vendor that's less than $5,000, or you're reimbursing yourself or members of your club. These are the ways that RFPs will be better. If you're using Coupa, sometimes you want to do things that are over 5,000, or all the transactions over 5,000 have to go through buy to pay. Any contract that needs to be signed or viewed, MIT students, staff, faculty, and staff cannot sign on behalf of MIT. I can't sign, so we all have to put our contracts through buy to pay. And if you want to purchase directly from a few select vendors, Amazon, Foreign Print, Staples, there are a few more that can be directly purchased from, so that you don't even have to go through the RFP process. So if you're, again, Amazon is really one of the most popular. So if you're purchasing something from Amazon, you can get that purchase done in 3 clicks. Whereas if you purchase something out of pocket from Amazon, then you have to go put the receipt into the RFP system. Then we're going to be asked why you didn't use buy to pay, and we say, I don't know. Then it's just a whole lot easier just to go through the system. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And I'm going to kick it over to Mary to just kind of talk about RFPs and the whole process of using the RFP system.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to talk about RFPs. One thing I wanted to talk about too is there are 3 different types of RFPs. This is where RFPs live. They're an atlas, okay? So you got a couple of different platforms that you're working with. It would be great if they were all on one, but unfortunately, we have to kind of juggle. So you've got Atlas. If you go into full menu, and I'm going to be pointing at my screen like you can see what I'm pointing at, but I got to do it. So you go to full menu, and then it's going to come up where you're going to have all these different choices. You want to click purchasing, all right? Then if you look down, you see manage reimbursements and then my reimbursements, okay? So manage reimbursements, that's where the payment taxable, which is when you're paying a vendor or for a person who provided services for you, lives. And then reimbursement, which is your last choice on that is a general reimbursement. That is if you're creating a reimbursement for somebody else in your club, or even a non-MIT person. Say you're working with a club in Harvard and they purchased all these things and you need to reimburse them because all these items that they purchased were for the event that you had. You would click reimbursement and you would be able to make them the payee and reimburse them directly, and a check would be just sent out to them, okay? And then under my reimbursement, where it says request a reimbursement for me, that would be when you've purchased something and you need to reimburse yourself. All right, so let's see what the next. Okay, so as I was saying, the request for reimbursement for me. The key to this, you've got to remember, is that if you are the payee, even if you're a signatory, a financial signatory for your club, you still have to send it to another financial signatory in the group. You as a payee cannot approve your own reimbursements. That is key to remember, okay? I review these RFPs for all this information that I'm giving you. So when one thing is not correct, I have to stop everything. I review it all totally, but I will have to stop, put it on hold, send it, you know what I mean? And it kind of gets, everything is delayed. So try to keep all of this stuff in mind. So you're going to do a reimbursement for yourself, or what's the next one? Or if you're going to reimburse someone else, as I said, under a managed reimbursement, this is for the general reimbursement. So you can create a reimbursement for anybody in your club or anyone outside of your club. Now this is, you got to remember the difference between an RFP payment, which is that payment taxable, and an RFP reimbursement. Reimbursement is someone's purchased something, so you're reimbursing them for that expense. Whereas if you need to pay a vendor or a person directly for services that they provided to your club, that's when you would do payment taxable. Okay. Now, say you clicked the reimbursement. This is your first screen that's going to come up. Okay, so it's a general reimbursement. You're going to put John Doe's name in there. But the system doesn't recognize a John Doe. They're like, no, no results found. So all you do is you click that. No results found, continue. And the next screen that comes up will be this. It's, if the person was in the system, all the information would be in there. If it was direct deposit, you know, that person was set up with direct deposit, it would be in there. If it was a check, it would have the mailing information. But this person isn't in there. So you just have to fill everything in. You can either have the check mailed directly to them, or as you can see, the other choice is to pick up a check from accounts payable. So those are your two choices. And then the next one, this is underneath all of that information. This is where you need to put everything that's got a little red asterisk next to it, except for the GL account, needs to be processed. It needs to be filled in before it comes into my inbox. Okay, so you want to put the data service. GL account is not important if you don't know what it is, or you don't even want to go down that road. That's fine. You can leave that blank. But cost object is really important, because if that lands in my inbox without a cost object, I can't approve it. I can't even look at it. All I know is that somebody sent it to me, and then I have to send, and then it goes on hold and it delays the process. Amount's very important too, because you need to put in what you're going to be trying to get reimbursed or pay. Explanation, the more information, the better. You can't just put food in there. You got to say, this was dinner for this event, or, you know, we purchased these for this, you know, you've got to give me an explanation, or you have to provide an explanation on what this expense is and why you're reimbursing that person. The more information, the better. Okay. At the very bottom, see where it says note to central office? That information, and I'm just becoming aware of this actually. So say you put someone's information in there and you put someone's address in there, but they want the check to go someplace else. You can put note to central office. You can put a mailing address in there, a different mailing address, like a PO box or something like that, where that check could go. So that would be what you would want to put in there. But next step would be save and continue. Okay. So once you click there, then you can attach your receipts. Okay. So for reimbursements, you're going to attach a proof of payment and an itemized receipt. You got to show me what was purchased, and you got to show me how it was paid for. It could be all in one receipt. It could be a couple of receipts. It could be proof of payment, could be a bank statement. It could be an invoice with a $0 amount due. Just something has to show me what was purchased and how it was paid. Restaurants, extremely important. When you go to a restaurant, make sure you get that itemized receipt. Make sure I get to see everything that you purchased and a subtotal. Deduct your sales tax, remember that. You know, tip can be, you know, reimbursed. Delivery can be reimbursed. Massachusetts sales tax, not so much, okay? So each receipt, you wanna select it. PDF format is the best format to do, okay? Just to give you a heads up on that, because a lot of times I can't, even though it gives you all those other choices, PDF is the easiest way for me to open, okay? And then you would just click, after you selected, you would attach. And then send to. This is where you're going to, if you're a financial signatory, not the payee, you can send it directly to me. If you're a financial, if you're the payee on it and a financial signatory, you still have to send it to a financial signatory. All right. Or if you created it for somebody else and you're not a financial signatory, you have to send it to a financial signatory. Okay. Do me a favor, spread this information out, tell your group how to do this, because people after a while, they'll start creating their own RFPs. You want to get this information out to everybody. Okay. So, and then the last step would be, you would just click send, and then it goes to whoever's inbox you sent it to. All right. So here, as you can see, I put it out there about the necessary receipts for proof of payment, zero balance invoice, credit card or bank statement, cash written on an invoice. That's fine. If you got to get that vendor to write down cash that it was paid in full. Itemized receipt is just a list. You get confused sometimes. It's like I asked for an itemized receipt and then they just tag on the proof of payment again. And it's like, no, I need to see what was, I'm very nosy. I like to look at what you guys are doing. And then you want to make sure a financial signatory is involved in the history of the RFP. Okay. Let's see what's next. All right, and now I will popcorn it over to Ramon.
Back to Coupa. Before I do that, I'm going to, in the chat, just kind of put, there's a link to tips and tricks on RFPs. So I'm just gonna stick that in the chat really quickly, so you can go to it and check that document out. All right, so let's talk about VitaPay. VitaPay, or Coupa, you can call it whichever you prefer, is the Institute's procurement system. So we use it to just kind of place orders with vendors, and more or less give them a promissory note, which is basically the purchase order. So what happens is you jump in, create a requisition. You want to buy, let's say, apparel for your group. You go in, type in the info, and we'll go through that process. And what will happen is a purchase order will be generated. And this purchase order will either be sent to the vendor by you or by the Vice President's Office of Finance when that's complete. Once the purchase order goes to the company, that is basically our agreement saying that we're going to pay for this, for these items. So the company, 99% of the time, will send out whatever item they have for you based on that formal agreement. That does not include us paying them yet. So we want to make sure that you go all the way through the process. So you may receive your stuff. The company has the purchase order in hand saying, great, we're going to get paid by MIT. But you got to follow that last step. You got to get the invoice from that vendor and send the invoice to invoices@mit.coupahost.com. Now, you can also send the invoice to myself or even Mary, and we can forward the invoice to that email address if you forget it. But we just want to be sure that that last step happens. So even if you put the invoice in the Coupa requisition, the Vice President's Office of Finance is not going to take that invoice from the requisition and pay it. So you do have to do that final step. And again, you can email it to me and I can take that final step for you. Again, we'll be sending this out, so I don't want you to get bogged down with trying to write this down. This is just a step-by-step just kind of pointed out on how to fill out the buy to pay requisition. So again, we'll send this out after this is done. So don't get lost in trying to copy this down. We're going to go through the buy to pay system right now. And again, if you have any questions about this, I know buy to pay can be a little funky sometimes. So let me know, ask your questions. So when you open up buy to pay, it's based off of your certificate. So you're going to get into this screen. Your name is going to be up here in the top right-hand corner like mine is. Your setup may be empty. I have a few things that are in my queue right now, but yours is probably going to be empty. So you won't see all this. What you will see are these tiles here. And these tiles, what I was referring to before, you know, if you want to make a purchase from Amazon, you can do it in about 3 clicks by just pressing the tile, the Amazon tile. There's Staples, there's Foreign Print. There are a few companies here that are useful for student organization operations. But if you're going to make an order in create a requisition in buy to pay, your first order of business is to up in the top center of the screen, you want to click that fountain pen. And once you click that fountain pen, you're going to see, and again, I just highlighted those tiles for you there. But once you click that fountain pen, you're going to pop up on, oh, here we go. I have a little video here for you. So what's going to happen? Let me stop this. So what's going to happen? Once you click the fountain pen, a screen will pop up and you'll be able to type in what it is that you want to order. So whether it's apparel, food, whatever, you type that right in there. And I think if I remember, yep, we're going to do some food here. And you want to go to the supplier. So the supplier will be the vendor name. And so let me stop it here really quickly. What's going to happen if you type in the supplier name, you're going to get a drop-down list if that supplier, if that vendor is in the system, which meaning they have been used within the last 18 months, anywhere throughout the Institute. If it does not pop in, so there's no place called Food Place, unfortunately. If it does not pop in, you'll get another screen, and we'll go to that. But you want to type in your vendor name, and you'll see that it'll say onboard new supplier. So you want to click onboard new supplier if we don't have a record of that place in our system. And I'll get to that later. You want to make sure you put in the unit price, whatever price of the thing will be. You want to put it in there. You want to make sure you choose the right commodity. So I know Mary was talking about GLs. You want to make sure you choose the right commodity so that, and the commodity is just the category of the item that you're purchasing. So again, whether it's food, apparel, whether it's, you know, a venue, you just want to make sure you get the right commodity. And then you can go ahead and add it to your cart. And then once it's added to your cart, you can go up here and click on that cart. And this is where it will bring you. But before we go here, I want to just kind of go back a little bit and talk about the supplier onboarding. I know that was really quickly what I just went through. So I want to be sure that we understand about the supplier onboarding. So basically, if there is a new supplier in the MIT system, so when you start typing that vendor's name in and it's not found, this screen will pop up. And you have the option to enter whether it's an international company or if it's somebody domestic. So we're going to go ahead and choose the domestic supplier. And what you need to do is fill this information out, and you have to fill it out accurately, or you'll never, your item will never get ordered. So you want to make sure that you have the correct business name. You want to make sure you have the email of a primary contact, and preferably their name, but if not, it's fine, because sometimes it goes to general emails within a business. And again, the phone number is great if you have it, but if not, that's fine too. What's going to happen is the Vice President's Office of Finance will contact the vendor, and they will get the proper documentation that they need, which is a W-9, and they would ask them to fill out the onboarding documentation, which they'll complete with all their business information, and again, the W-9 form, so that you don't have to go and chase it down. In the past, we had to kind of include it with the order. So now VPF does that legwork for us. I will say, if you don't hear that the supplier has been approved within 48 hours, shoot me an email, or if even better, if you have a contact within that company, just touch base with them to ask them if they received an email from MIT. If not, I can do some legwork to chase it down. But I would say give it about 48 hours. At some points of the year, you might want to give it a little longer, depending on what is on the desk of VPF at that time. But this is supposed to save you some legwork. So let me go back a little bit just to kind of quickly talk about some of the vendors that are preferred suppliers at MIT. And again, if you have a need for any of these items, it is just a click through. You click onto the tile of the company that you're purchasing from. It will bring you to that company's website. You go to that website and you choose that you want to invoice MIT, and it'll bring you right back to buy to pay. And it'll bring you right back here, which this is important. So when you do complete your documentation, this is outside of the tile. So if you have an invoice in hand or a contract in hand, and you do want to submit it, what you would want to do is make sure that you click on the address magnifying glass, and you can utilize the W2500 address, or there's also an alternative ship to address that you can utilize. Now, this is if you want to utilize your own address. So if you have something being shipped and you live on campus or live off campus, you can click alternative ship to address. What that would do is leave this blank, and then you would have to fill in your address down here in notes to buyer. What I always tell everybody is fill it in here in notes to buyer, as well as put it in the comment section, just to be double sure that you do get your package. Over here, you'll see the file, where you can add attachments. If you add an attachment, you want to make sure that you click attachments included so that it's reviewed. As well as if you have a contract, you want to make sure that you click here so that the contract is reviewed and signed. Now, this section is very important because it determines the different routing paths. So if you don't have a file attached, no attachments included, the purchase order may be generated automatically based off of you not attaching any documentation. So you don't want to do that, because you definitely want them to review your contract and sign it. I will always ask everybody, if you do have a contract, depending on the complexity of the contract and depending on the time of year and who else is submitting documentation, contracts, and things like that, I would always say give yourself 30 business days. You want to be able to get this reviewed and signed, because if there's a lot of back and forth with the contract, with negotiations, or there's a lot on VPF's desk that they just aren't able to get to it in time, you want to make sure that you have a buffer before your event or before that payment is due. if you run into any problems, definitely I'm always available to help walk you through the system. Also, once below in your screen, you'll see the items that you chose to purchase in your cart. So this is where you add your, if you see where the arrow is, where you add your cost object. So you click on the magnifying glass and you can add your cost object for your club. And also if you, let's say, you know, I know in some cases you may want to split the cost. So maybe you have some money in your F series account or in your funding account if you're a GSC group. Or maybe you're doing a group, you know, two groups are purchasing one thing because it'll be useful. What you want to do is click on the wishbone, and that way you can split the cost objects. So you can split by percentage or you can split by amount. So if you have something for $1,000, you can say 1,000 goes here, 500 goes here, and 500 goes here. Or you can do 25% and 75%. Whatever makes sense, and it'll calculate it for you, and it'll add that to both cost objects. And you can add more cost objects too. If you're splitting it between 19 different cost objects, you can do that as well. One thing that I think is very important that we don't necessarily talk about enough is the selection of source form. So anytime you're using a vendor that's not a preferred vendor of MIT, and there is a list of preferred vendors that I can send, that I will send to this group as well. If you're purchasing something over $10,000, you have to attach the selection of source form. So you have to go through and fill it out. And it's basically MIT's way of being good stewards of the money that is given to MIT. So we want to have documentation on everything to say, hey, we looked around and we found that this is the best option for this purchase over 10,000 for these reasons. So that needs to be on file. This is mostly for research, but it extends everybody's. So they don't say because you're a student organization, you don't have to do it. So this is something that over the entire institute, we're all responsible for. And you can find that form via that link. And again, I think it's important to know what documentation you need when you're completing any of these forms. You know, and this is just a short list. I'm sure there's more documentation that you could have handy, but you want to make sure, especially for RFP payments to vendors, you want to make sure that you have a W-9 form for that company, especially if they're not in our system. You want to have an invoice and make sure that it's marked invoice and not, you know, sometimes they give you like a quote or something like that. It has to say invoice. If you're submitting something that requires a contract to be reviewed, please make sure you have that contract. If the company sends you a link to a PDF, print the PDF and enter it into and have the PDF attached into the buy to pay. You want to make sure that you have all of your documentation lined up. For RFPs, you want to make sure you have those itemized receipts. You don't want to submit a receipt to hold up your payment because that's just going to hold you up. So anything that you have, make sure everything is outlined in that receipt. So if you go to dinner, you don't want just the credit card payment receipt. You want the itemized list from everything that was eaten at dinner. You know, Mary mentioned she knows that she wants to see, but you know, in all reality, alcohol is not an item that can be purchased with institute funds. So we do have to go through and just make sure that the purchases that were made are legitimate purchases and are allowable. When you're submitting your buy to pay for something that's over $10,000, as simple as it may seem, even if this is the only thing out there, this is the only company that provides this certain thing for $10,000, you still have to have the selection of source form and say, hey, and that's the rationale on your selection of source. This is the only company that provides this. This is why I'm going with it. You want to make sure you have company information. So a person is a lot better than kind of a general email that 15 people answer, because if you do have a direct contact, that person can hopefully either complete the onboarding process or forward it to somebody who can complete the onboarding process for us, to move that stuff along. Because if there's, again, a whole department answering one email, we never know if anybody is actually going to fill that out. So better to have one contact than to have too many that are expecting the other person to do it. And I think that really exhausts everything. I think I want to make sure that I open it up for any questions. Again, any specific questions that you may have with any buy to pay things that you're doing, any RFP things that you're doing that you're having some trouble with, let us know. All right. I think we did get a few questions in the chat, and those were good questions, but we just want to make sure that you all are. That's a great question. Where's B2P found? B2P, you can log on to B2P. It's mit.coupa host, COUPAHOST.com. I'll put that in the chat. And then the RFPs are in Atlas. So if you go on to Atlas, you open up the full menu and then go into the purchasing tab, you should see all three selections of the RFPs: the reimbursement for yourself, and taxable payment. And again, everything is run off of your certificates. So if you open any of these applications on a friend's computer, you're not gonna see what you need to see, but you'll definitely go back when you see it on your when you go back to your home computer, you'll see it. Right. All right. Well, if there are no further questions, I think this seems like a good place to end here. Just want to thank everybody for stopping in. We really appreciate it. We'll send this out in email right when we conclude here. And if there are any questions, you can definitely email me those questions, or if there again is anything specific that you need to know for your specific group, this is the opportunity. But you can always email us.
Two things too. Pass this information around. Make sure you add it to your transition documents, so the people that are coming in after you will know these processes, not restarting the wheel here. And also, I am doing my very first open door financial clinic on Thursday from 2 to 4 in W20 at PDR 4. So if you have any questions, bring your laptop. I can walk you through anything in regards to RFPs or buy to pay, transfers, just any financial processes. Please come by and bring your laptop and I will work with you.
Awesome. Thank you all again.
Thank you, folks.